Meeting of the West Newbury Board of Selectmen, Thursday, August 6th, 6:03 p.m. This meeting is being broadcast on local cable TV and recorded for broadcast on the local cable channel internet. Our meeting is also accessible by remote participation. The instructions are to use GoToMeeting. The access code is 976-281-637, and the phone number is 786-535-3211. Thank you all for coming. The major purpose of the meeting tonight is to discuss the request for use of the different areas of the Pipestave Hill on Sunday, September 13th and Sunday, October 11th. To go to a tiny bit of background so we're all on the same page, the West Newbury Riding and Driving Club had requested use of the rings and the parking area around the rings for an event on the 13th and also for an event on the 11th of October, September 13th and 11th of October. They have been doing this particular event for quite some time, 10 or 15 years, I believe. And the last 2 years, one by, I guess, an oversight, at the same time there was a approval for a West Newbury Youth League flag football jamboree at the same time. So according to some participants, and I guess everybody managed to deal with both events at the same time, although it was crowded. And so that's the situation. At the present time, the Riding and Driving Club had requested that we, the Board of Selectmen, come in to mediate this slight controversy. The Board of Selectmen have, according to the bylaws related to the mill pond, that when there is a dispute between two committees or boards or organizations related to the use of the Pipestave facilities, that the Board of Selectmen can become the arbitrators in that situation. So that's the situation as it is now. The West Newbury Youth League doesn't at the moment have a problem with the October 11th plan by the Riding and Driving Club, because they don't at the moment plan on having any events at that particular time. The major issue is that obviously we have a limited amount of parking, and on top of that, there's an issue with not wanting to combine horse trailers and horses with lots of little kids. That's usually not a good mix of wildlife. So I'll give you a little bit of what I took away from it, and everyone can correct me afterwards. I looked at there was a map provided in your packet that showed an aerial photograph of an event. I don't exactly know what event it was, but the parking lot seems to be relatively full. I'd put that maybe a few more cars could have been put in the middle of the lots, but I saw that on that particular aerial photograph there were approximately 160 cars, and it looked like we had a pretty close to full house with that number of cars on the map as shown here. How did I figure that out? I counted them. Okay, so the West Newbury Youth League estimated that perhaps there could be total of 600 people at the, I assume, coming and going. I don't think there'd be 600 people at the same time, but that could, I would estimate, run to 180 cars. And I would throw this out. I don't know if anyone thought this, because of the coronavirus situation. I don't think too many families, say, would be carpooling in this particular situation. I'm thinking one family brings their kid or their two kids or whatever, and it's less likely that kids are going to be doubling up in the same car. I could be wrong, but that seems like that it would drive the number of cars parking there up a little bit. The Riding and Driving Club estimated that there could be 60 or 70 participants in their event. Sometimes people have more than one horse in the same trailer. So I'm going to say that maybe that goes to be 40 or 50 trailers. The size of a car plus a trailer equals, let's say, twice as big. A trailer is sometimes longer than a car, but for the sake of argument, let's call it the size of two cars. So if we say that the Riding and Driving Club is going to use up the space of 80 to 100 cars, and the Youth League is going to use up the space of 160 to maybe 180 cars, we're talking about approximately 250 cars. Theoretically, all this is just theoretical, but I don't see how 250 cars, especially when we're trying to social distance and also separate the equestrians from the other cars. That seems tough. So that's where I'll leave it now. Who would like to comment further?
I'd like to go speak if I could, Archie. I don't see a way to raise. I'll just speak. So to back up for just a moment, I want to make it clear that no youth sports group has approached me with a concern about using the athletic fields at Pipestave during an equestrian event. So just want to make that known that it's Archie, I think you mentioned that the West Newbury Youth League didn't have an issue with the October date, which is Columbus Day weekend. West Newbury Youth League has taken no issue with equestrian use at all on any occasion. So we certainly invite the equestrians to the property. So just wanted to make that point of clarification. For the parking, we can only fit, by my count, we can only fit about 210 cars on the gravel parking area at Pipestave before we start to overflow into the grass and over by where the bark mulch pile used to be. So yeah, the number of cars combined between an equestrian event and the youth league event will not fit within the gravel area. But I want to bring to everyone's attention that for the past two falls, and yes, the September 9th, I think it was, Sunday, 2018, that was the first occurrence of this concurrent use between equestrian and West Newbury Youth League, and it was entirely by accident. I took responsibility for it in my apology letter to Deb Hamilton, written on that same Sunday. And that evening, I apologized to Deb for the oversight. But even on that Sunday, Tom Flaherty, the then chair of Park and Rec, first he called me and said, "What have you done? There's kids here playing sports, and today is the equestrian event." So he volunteered to direct traffic, and he diverted youth sports over to the Page School, and I think that worked out okay. That was the fall of 2018. Spring of 2019, Just brief summary. My understanding is that the West Newbury Riding and Driving Club approached Tom Flaherty from Park and Rec, asking if it would be okay, it's my understanding, to use the equestrian area of Pipestave during a Saturday or a Sunday. I think it was May 12th, 2019, when there were youth sports games scheduled. And West Newbury Youth League took that up as an agenda item at a meeting, and they unanimously approved the equestrian group using Pipestave on that particular, I think it was a Saturday. So Tom confirmed back to the equestrian group that he was okay with them using the facility. The line of thinking was hopefully the West Newbury Riding and Driving Club would reciprocate that fall of 2019, and be agreeable to letting flag football jamboree take place during the that date, that Sunday in September, which they were agreeable to doing so. For that occasion, the arrangement we had, Tom pretty much brokered this, but we had one representative from the youth league, one parent, and one representative from the equestrian group, both sitting in chairs, as I recall, at a small table near where the hose bib is at the entrance to DPW. And they were allowing the equestrian traffic to pass through, and either turning the youth sports families into DPW with overflow to Page. So during both occasions, the 2018 and 2019 event, the Youth League has conceded the gravel parking area to the West Newbury Riding and Driving Club, and West Newbury Youth League families have been using the DPW lot in the Page School. So I think that's worked out, or from my perspective, that's worked out okay in the past.
Okay, so why are we here tonight then? This is Glenn Kemper. So for it to get to our level, not level, but it seems like we're the arbiters in making sure this works well. So if that's the case, that Jack, that sounds like an absolute perfect match, and that's what I've been told, but I can't see it firsthand. So since this is may
I speak?
Well, I'm not done,
Okay.
Kathy, if you don't mind. So have we had any dialogue with the flag football jamboree people, and why do they have to have it on those days, since it's all internal West Newbury kids, I'm told, and the Riding and Driving Club, if I'm not mistaken, has had this for 1 billion years, and they give the information like in January. So what happened that just can the jamboree, I'm not even sure if that even legally happened this year, but just say it can. Why can't they switch their day? Why does it have to be on that day? Does anybody have an answer to that? Or is that I just never got one yet.
Sure, I can speak to that, Glenn. So we brought NFL flag football to West Newbury Youth League in the fall of 2016. That first year, there weren't a lot of older kids that signed up. It was mostly younger kids. And it was the first year the program was smaller. It was about 124 registrations, I believe. And for the first two falls, the fall of 2016, fall of 2017, the event was held on that same Sunday, but we played, instead of using 3 fields at Pipestave, we used the 3 U8 soccer fields at Bachelor Street, lined in the outfield of the baseball diamonds.
Okay.
And,
yep.
And of course, the little kids became bigger kids, and the program grew. And
it's a new program. It's a very successful program.
Yeah. So, and then that fall of 2018 was the first year that I had scheduled the president of the youth league shortly before that, and I scheduled the event at Pipestave, completely unaware that that date was a no-fly date for youth sports. I did find later, I went back to look, and in my apology email to Deb Hamilton, I conceded. I found an April 15th email from Tom Flaherty saying these are the no sport dates. So I took responsibility for that concurrent use at the time in September of 2018, and I still do to this day.
So
So that's
thanks for
solution of
taking
it.
responsibility. Thanks for taking responsibility, but can they be non-sports days again? Why do they have to be sports days? That's my, I guess that's my underlying question. I understand the program. I love the program. I understand it's up and coming. My kids didn't have that, like the rugby program. I mean, I understand the demand for the fields that with all these new programs, and I love them. But why can't those be non-sports days again, like they were before? That's what I want to try to get an answer to.
Well, so in the before era, there was no flag football on Sundays. By default, there were no youth sport activity scheduled for any Sundays. So when we brought the program into West Newbury Youth League, one of the discussions at the board level was, how do we bring this in yet not take away from the soccer program? And someone had the idea of having flag football be very unique and be on Sundays. That way the kids could play soccer on Saturdays. We wouldn't be taking away from the soccer program to host the flag football program. So that's how the Sunday thing evolved. You know, in the before days, there was no flag football, there was no sports on Sundays, hence no clash in the use of the facility. But then when flag football came in, we decided to have it on Sundays, and that brought about the dual use eventually in the fall of 2018. Now, regarding, why that particular Sunday, the youth, it would be hard we couldn't really start the season earlier because we would have to have player evaluations and be making teams when families are still on vacation in August, early to mid-August. And if we jumped ahead 1 week and had the Jamboree a week earlier, we'd really have to open up registration and start practicing in second week in August, frankly. If we were to start a week later, we'd be pushing into basketball season. So,
okay, I got it.
We're really up against.
I think
weekends.
Yeah, I think Kathy wanted to speak to this. I have my questions answered up to this point. Thanks, Jack.
Sure.
Steve, I just wanted to give a little history as to why it became to your level. Is that in case anybody doesn't know, this is the 100th anniversary of the rest of the riding and of the original founding of the Riding and Driving Club. So we had been hoping before all this pandemic stuff started that we were going to. Last year we had our adventure trail has slowly been building more and more popularity, and last year we got, I think it was 69 horses and riders. And this year we had been hoping, especially with the 100th anniversary, to have more. And if you have more, it's just the parking would have been a problem. And also last year we happened not to run the trail that was chosen did not go across Main Street to Pipestave. And this year, since we knew that the town and ECTA and Riding and Driving Club had worked on the trail that comes up to the water tower, it was felt that that would be appropriate use, and therefore we would be crossing horses, and if they were crossing kids at the same time, that could be an unsafe situation. And we just, for safety, had wanted it. But now with the COVID, with all of this pandemic stuff, we are not anticipating to do as large an event. We are not we're hoping for maybe 40 at the most 50 riders, just because we want to keep everybody physically distant. And so we are willing to have it back to sharing this year. I can't speak for future years, just because I know that everybody wants to be able to do things now. And if we can find a way for everybody to be safe, I know I had talked to Wendy Willis, and she had talked about youth sports, possibly putting some more signage up, especially because we'll be coming out by the water tower, to make sure that if kids and families are parked up there, that they be aware that horses will be coming out, and not to scare them and not to go up to them. And spook them.
Can I ask a question, Kathy? So, do
Yes.
you plan on bringing horses across 113?
Yes, we've done this every year, and we get it approved by it goes, we bring that to the police, and the police usually give us traffic cones and vests, and we have volunteers to help people across.
Kathy, so where is the
This year there are going to be 2 crossings of 113. One is going to be down by the solar field. The people
Okay.
I'd given Angus the route. The route would go out by the edge of the baseball field to the north side of Dunfield, around Dunfield, through the woods, back up to what we call the middle field, across the street there, and then there's a long way and a short way through Riverbend, and then come up the trail at the water tower and come across there, and then once they get back to the rings, they're done.
So it's a crossing right where the road to Page, are you crossing right where the road to Page is?
Yes.
And you're crossing the entrance to Mill Pond?
And we had figured that we might, since we had not gone the Riverbend route last year, we had hoped to do it this year, especially knowing that the work we knew that the work was being done, was it last fall or this spring, so that the trail wasn't improved.
So, Kathy, when you say that you're going to be crossing the solar field, so are you going to be where the entrance to Mill Pond? How are you getting?
There's a little path where you go into the solar field. If you across from that, there is a small opening. There's a small opening right here in the woods. Right. I can't point, but there is in the.
Okay, I understand.
There's a jump down in the middle, and you can barely see it. There's a small opening in the woods, and then there's an opening into the other field. That opening has been there and used by us and by Myopia Hunt and other groups for years.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big rock in the middle so that cars can't go through it.
Okay, thank you.
So Kathy, I have a question about the earlier on in the route. I read the description, the verbal description of the route, and I was it wasn't completely clear to me, but it sounded like the route actually goes down along the edge of the fields that the sports played on. Did I miss?
No, that goes on the edge of the baseball field. And the flag football jamboree, I believe, takes the lower fields. It's just going around the top field.
When you say the edge, you mean the edge closest to the recycling?
Yes, on that gravel road there.
Yeah. So Rick, there's a gravel road that starts that comes around.
It's actually town. That part of the road, that part of the property is actually on the town part of the facility, not the pipe
you can
station.
see whoever's putting that up. You can see that gravel road, up there, and
Yes.
that's the handicap access down to the lower fields too. That goes all the way down to the lower
I
field.
guess I was envisioning that there'd be a fair amount of foot traffic in that area, and that's why I was wondering.
That's why we're concerned about the.
Right.
Are they using that outfield as a flag football field, or are they using all?
They were not doing anything with it, but I don't know. I can't speak for if they had.
So if they're not using that field, all the traffic goes behind the backstop. So
correct.
So where you see the home base right there on the picture that's on our screen, there's a good nice walkway that comes down to all those fields. You can see that. So generally, nobody goes up there at all, because that's a pretty big incline.
The thing is, we just have to make sure that the kids are not, since we will have horse trailers near that area, we just have to make sure, and this has worked in the past, is to make sure the kids are not running and being terribly rambunctious. I know that our volunteer last year had to help the youth league volunteers a lot in their efforts to cross people, because they just sort of didn't know what to do. They were basically some moms who had been told to sort of sit there for an hour and didn't know how to be as helpful as they could.
Well, that's a good thing that they got volunteers. So
Yes, no, it was great.
let's try to be positive.
No, I'm just making sure, I mean, and we're gonna probably have the same person helping with parking, and she did not mind helping the youth league volunteers last year, and she thought it worked well last year, the way it did, having 2 volunteers there. And we're hoping that will work well again this year.
So the elephant,
Wait a
the
second.
elephant, yeah, I got it. I'll back off, Archie.
Here you after you cross 113 and are heading back towards that, going past the recycling area. So you're going to have a corridor with kids and families crossing 113 and walking to the fields after they park their car, perhaps at Page. So you have that, and you have the horses.
It's the horses, the groups.
Going down the same road. Is that correct?
That's correct. There are small groups of horses, and they are spaced like 5 to 10 minutes apart. So it's not like there's a continuous line of horses going up and down that access road.
Okay, so 5 to 10 minutes, Kathy? Okay.
And depending on where somebody has parked their trailer, they'll be stopping where their trailer is at the end. Well, actually, they have to come and check out. We make sure that everybody checks out because we want to make sure that nobody has gotten lost or had bees sting a horse or something like that on the trail. So we ask that everybody checks out afterwards, and then they are going to depart.
So Kathy,
Was that particular area a problem last year or not?
No, it was just the only issue we were going to have is if we were going to have more, if we were trying to hold something bigger this year, it might have been a problem.
so I'm going to piggyback.
We are not holding anything bigger. If youth
Okay, so
something
I'm going to
bigger,
piggyback on Archie's thing about things working. So when you say you're not going to hold anything bigger, it seemed like this all kind of worked out, but with good plan, whatever. So how many horses? So if you say we were hoping to have 100, and we'll probably, no. Okay, whatever the number is, whatever the number is 80, whatever the number is. So with the pandemic, we're thinking about 40. Well, how many, when you're making reference to things in the past, how many people participated? Because that would help us understand, you know what I mean?
Last year it was, I believe, Donna can maybe jump in. I think it was 69 horses last year.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yes.
It was, but it was our biggest year.
And
Yes.
it worked.
And the year before that, it was probably like 55.
Okay.
Is that, so it's an event that has been growing in popularity, similar to the popularity of flag football. So
When,
Okay. So Jack,
This year, though, you're
can I ask you a question? Let's go back to flag football. Jack, so who makes a determination that this jamboree's not a tournament, and we have a tournament, and the tournaments are not supposed to happen? They're on the we can't have list. And are we splitting hairs when we say we're going to have everybody here? And I understand that while the tournament, it doesn't count in the standings. But my daughter who played lacrosse, all my kids have graduated, but my daughter who played lacrosse for Pentucket, since she could hold a lacrosse stick, went to a tournament over in those fields in Byfield, and it's considered a tournament, even though it didn't count in anyone's standings. So how do we, are we splitting hairs by calling this a jamboree and not a tournament? Because tournaments are said that we can't have, in this state at this time. So who's approving this and understanding what actually is going to happen with this flag football thing?
So, working in closely with Paul Savigny on the guidance. Paul and Angus have been forwarding me the guidance hot off the press. Sometimes I think they're perhaps competing with each other to see who can forward it to me first. So we're working very closely with Paul. What can't be done. Whether, we've called it the Jamboree since 2016. We're not call it the Jamboree now to avoid the word tournament. But the long and short of it is, if we can't have tournaments or jamborees or round robin games, then we can't. And whatever the state comes up with, Paul, West Newbury as a town can make further amendments to it. So we don't really know, Glenn, what we can and can't do.
Okay.
If tournaments are out, then we may just have to play single games. At this point for the kids, I mean, something is better than nothing. I know my own 3 kids are climbing the walls. So if we can play games, then we will play single games. If one team playing a round robin type thing, so one team plays every team plays every other team. If that's not allowed, then so be it. It would just be single games.
Well, I understand that, but I'm a big advocate to get kids to play and stuff like that. But I've seen the emails and the estimates, and listen to the estimates, that we could have up to 600 people at this jamboree. So, I watched Channel 4 News, and they were complaining, and the governor was complaining that there was like 125 people on a booze cruise in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I mean by that?
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
Jack, have we ever considered, sorry, Glenn, have we ever considered, decentralizing this by Brad Busher, Parks and Rec Commission,
Okay.
347 Main Street?
Yeah,
Have we
I
ever
just
considered decentralizing this event where maybe we hold it at to reduce the numbers? We could do things at the Pines. We could do things at Town Forest and Merrimack, and then we could do certain age groups.
But how could we? Because I thought they were all West Newbury kids.
They're not. It's all. It's.
Oh! I was under the understanding these were all West Newbury kids.
No. It's all. It's amazing.
I love the program. Love it. Okay, I want more programs for kids to get out and exercise more. But I'm just saying that you have to put yourself.
Hey, Glenn, I asked a question to Jack. Sorry, Glenn, I just asked a question to Jack. Can Jack answer that question, Glenn, before you start? Is that okay, Glenn?
Fine.
Thanks.
Because I was told it was all West Newbury kids an hour and a half ago. So this is new news to me.
No, it's. Glenn, if you'd like offline, I can shoot you the history from year to year from 2016. It's predominantly West Newbury kids. I don't know how many offhand. We have some Merrimack and some Groveland.
Which is great. Which is
so
great.
It's
good.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the kids get a kick out of it because they get to meet they get to meet the kids from the other towns their age before going to middle school. So once these kids become 7th graders, they're in the big middle school, they already know each other. So it's great.
But what you didn't really answer Brad's question. Why can't it be spread out?
Well, it could be spread out. This year, I have an echo. I apologize if my audio's not coming through. It could be spread out. This year is a very unique year. I mean, one of the in a jamboree is that there's a ton of kids, there's a ton of families. We're all playing short-sided 30-minute games. We usually have the grill going. We won't this year, so it's kind of an event. All in one spot at the same time, and families wind up staying there the entire day. Adults talking to adults and kids playing, with kids. This year's unique, so I mean, in theory, it could be split up. I know we played at the Pines in 2016 for our Super Bowl, and we found the field conditions pretty tough, a lot of rocks, and of course. Maybe that's okay for tackle because you've got pads on, but flag football, the kids don't have pads. So that turned out to be a rough go at the Pines. Town Forest, I guess that's a possibility. We'd have to check with Merrimack and see if that's okay. Need additional flag field lining expense. we'd have to line the other away field, so to speak, instead of just lining the pipe stave fields.
I'd like to read from the official document from the governor on phase 3, step 1, for lower risk sports. And it's hard to know there isn't a definitive definition of whether flag football even is one, but considering that it is, it says competition and tournament organizers must, and I emphasize the word must, adhere to the following: outdoor competitions and tournaments, no more than 25 players on any surface playing areas for team group sports, no more than 100 people, including participants, players, coaches, volunteers, spectators in the aggregate in and on any surrounding surface playing area or start and finish lines at any one time. So if you're talking about 600, that is way, even if we're allowing that flag football would be considered a lower risk sport, it says that no tournaments can have no tournament or other type of competition. Well, this is certainly an other type of competition. It can't be more than 100 people. I'm reading right off the government notice.
Hey, Archie, I'd like to piggyback on that, if I could, please.
Okay.
So, is there blocking?
No, there's a non-contact rule, Glenn. Contact is actually a penalty.
Okay, so you don't have people lining up, excuse me, blocking the defensive people from trying to get to your quarterback.
No, you actually have to. There's a rule where the
Okay,
offense
that's fine.
has
I
to.
don't want to take anybody's time. That's fine. I just wanted I had to get that vision in my head because I just visioned that it would be blocking. Thank you.
Well, there are rules about rights of way between the ball carrier and defender, who has to yield, basically. Archie, to your point, so this is 5v5, so it's only 10 players on the field at a time. The field is 30 yards by 70 yards. So playing surfaces themselves are much smaller than the U14 fields, which are pipe stave. So there's a U14 on fields 5, 6, and 7, which are the 3 fields. So the flag football fields are much smaller than those fields, allowing for more space between fields. So on any field at a given during a given game, there would be 10 players, 2 refs, and assuming 2 parents per player, 20 parents. So that would be, in theory, 32 people on the 30 by 70 field, plus the 2 sidelines.
Hey, I have a strange comment. Why don't we, because of the COVID, forget about the Jamboree this year, have the Flag Football League if we possibly can, and we'll figure out all the parking and all these things for next year. What about that? Wouldn't that end everything right now and just say, because there's so many questions, we're here tonight talking about something that might not even happen because of COVID, and you might not even, have the Jamboree tonight. So why don't we just say, let's skip Jamboree tonight because the local board of health might not even allow what you're asking. And have flag football if you can. And then I promise we'll work all this out for next year.
That's certainly an option, Glenn. I'm not going to advocate for one solution or another. I just want to be prepared so that if we can have youth sports, we're getting these kids back outside, being active, interacting with each other. So the first thought is, the more activity, the better. I think it would be a bummer to not have this year. There have been a lot of things that have been a bummer this year. My other thought is the problem's not going to go away. You can put it off for a year, but it's going to come back. So if you want to defer it for,
we start working on this immediately. Like, we can't push it. We can't push it. I've been up with Kathy Ferry, Tom Flaherty, probably for the last, I don't know how, Kathy.
Yes.
For like
Too many years to count.
Yeah, years trying to work this
the
out.
solution is pretty simple. Why don't we just park people on the upper soccer field, on the outfield of the Babe Ruth League field? They're there for literally 3 hours, the cars, okay? And you could totally segregate the circulation between the two events very effectively. We do not have a space problem. What we have is a relationship problem between flag and equestrians.
But I was told, is that Brad who's talking? Yes, Brad, is that you?
Yeah, it's me.
You're not coming up on my phone, I'm sorry. So, but I was told if we park people up on the outfield of the Babe Ruth field, is that what you're saying? I thought that was
Yeah.
I thought that was a path for horses. I thought Kathy said that was a path for horses earlier. So moving cars up there with moving horses down that road might not be a good idea. I could be.
I think it's a reasonable compromise.
This is Kathy speaking. How about if we don't have the jamboree, but just regular games that day? That might work, because then there would be less participants on both sides. Glenn said to work on next year.
If you're bringing cars down the same path as horses down to that Babe Ruth outfield, I don't think that's a good idea.
So the parking from the youth league perspective is not an issue. Whether we park the DPW or if the equestrian group needs space there for the trailers, parking over at the Page isn't ideal. But if it's a showstopper, that's not an issue either. So.
The point is how do we segregate these two events and the circulation between these two events? And is that possible?
It doesn't sound like
possible?
it. With your idea, Brad.
I think there's plenty of space.
Well, there's plenty of
We
space.
got 576 acres to work with between Riverbed and Mill Pond. Why is there not space?
Okay, so what's your proposal? You just said that you were going to put cars down in the outfield of Babe Ruth, and Kathy was telling me that was a path for horses. So I'm not really sure.
I would put that back on Kathy and the organizers.
Who has that view of Pike State? We put that back up again. Is that Archie?
I think Angus. I think Angus has the map of the area.
Put up the map.
Okay, so I'm thinking as I'm talking, so I apologize in advance if this won't make any sense. But if the youth league families were to park remotely, whether DPW Page, and then walk through the gravel parking lot, walk behind the backstop to access fields 5, 7, which are the 3 lower fields, there'd be no foot traffic around the field of Babe Ruth, which I think is where Kathy is bringing the horses through. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so in theory, the only interaction between kids and horses, social interaction, would be when the youth league families and their kids are walking from the Page School down through the gravel parking lot, essentially, to get to the backstop area, because the horses would be going the other direction, right? Horses would be leaving Pipestave and heading towards Main Street. Is that correct?
No, they're heading from the rings down past the baseball field and then on the north side of the Dunn field.
Okay, so there'd be a T intersection there basically where the horses would have the coming through the gravel entrance to the parking area to get
Yep.
to the gravel loop behind the outfield. And that's where the kids, I guess, would essentially interact with the horses, because the kids would be walking from the DPW and or Page, walking down the gravel drive to get to the path behind the backstop, access the 3 lower fields. I think that might be the least interaction. Now, normally we rest one of the lower fields, either field 6 or field 7 gets rest every fall. So we've used field 4 as a flag football field, which is the outfield of Babe Ruth, and the 2 open lower fields. But because they haven't seen any wear this spring, we could certainly open the 3 lower fields, at least on that one day for flag football, and vacate Babe Ruth entirely. And I like to think this is doable, but I'm not trying to, force a solution by any means. I'm just hoping we can work it out and have successful at the multi-use
I have to
facility.
say, that seems like less interaction than using the road behind the outfield for both horses getting off to the gun field and people going down there to park. That's a one-lane thing. Have those.
Hey,
My other question is, in terms of the crossing of 113, I'm still concerned with the number of people crossing 113 without having some form of at least one
detail.
officer there to direct traffic. I don't know how anyone else feels about that.
Well, I would think this is Glenn Kemper. I wouldn't sign off anything unless we had at least one detail, and I don't know how that expense is going to be incurred, but an 8-hour day or whatever it was, I worked out some numbers earlier. It's going to be around $600 or $700. So I'm not sure how that's going to work, but we need at least one person, dedicated person there.
So my thoughts on that are, since there's horses and both groups are crossing Main Street, I'm wondering if the West Newbury Riding and Driving Club would be agreeable to splitting the cost of a detail officer 50-50 for the day.
I would think that would be fair. That would be Glenn Kemper speaking.
My only problem with that is that we use all the proceeds from this as a donation, and that will reduce if we have to pay $300 or $400, that will reduce about in half our donation.
Okay. Hey, is anybody here from the Board of Health? Are you here on this call?
He doesn't show up.
No. Okay, Jack. What's the end date of your tournament to decide, like, if you know what I mean by that? Like, there has to be like an end date of COVID's gonna say, okay, we can't do it. Is there a like, you're checking in with the local Board of Health, you're checking in with the state, and if this is even permitted under the guidelines that are set forth, what is your drop dead date? Saying, okay, we can't have this because of the present things, because it looks like the governor is not going to relax any of these things. It looks like he's going in the opposite direction, quite honestly. I mean, he's being silent, but it doesn't look like it's going to be relaxed in any way.
Yep. So we just don't know what we don't know, Glenn. I wish I knew. Here's our approach. We want to be ready and not be caught flat-footed if we can have some form of youth sports. So what we did is we opened a no-cost registration for soccer and flag football, so people could sign up. If we can't hold the season, we don't have to issue all the refunds like we did with baseball. And then, of course, the season opened, and we opened it. That was a whole different story.
I can't imagine.
No, so we're doing no-cost registrations just to see, get the level of interest, because some families might want to hold back and not have their young athletes playing sports this fall. That's understandable. I respect everyone's decision because I don't think anyone really is an expert. I mean, we could be informed, but I don't really think anyone knows the level of risk and what it means for, if the kids play football, are they going to catch COVID? If they wear masks, will that prevent them from getting COVID? None of us are experts. So what we're doing is no cost registrations. If we can hold the season, we'll simply make that a fee-based registration, and all the families will automatically get notified via West Newbury Youth League email blast that the fee registration is open. Please pay and sign the waiver.
Yeah, I understand all that, but I'm talking about this jamboree. I think the jamboree is something totally different than your season, because it sounds like I've watched kids play baseball up at Bachelor. That's different than them having a jamboree like that we usually do on Memorial Day, and all the kids come down and they have like 1-inning games and stuff like that, and there's 500-600 people there. So I'm talking about specifically the jamboree. Hopefully the season will go on because the kids need it. I'm talking about what's your drop dead date about this jamboree thing. That's what I'm trying to do.
So we really don't have one, Glenn, to be honest with you. What we do is we have player evaluations, and then we make teams as fair as we possibly can. And then those are the teams for the season. Those are the teams for the jamboree and the teams for the regular season. So if there's nothing preventing us from going that far downstream with it at that point in time, we will. We're going to take it as far as we can until someone says you got to pump the brakes. So we won't really know until the very last minute. Now, what the proactive step is, I had emailed Paul Savigny sometime last week. I don't know if Angus or anyone else is on a copy offhand. I had asked Paul if there's anyone here at the town level or the state level that the youth league could basically petition to say, can we please make a distinction between flag football and tackle football? Because right now, tackle football in phase 3, step 1 is listed, correctly listed, as a high-risk sport. Flag football is a non-contact sport by definition. So hoping to make a distinction between flag football and tackle football. There was no such distinction made in phase 3, step 1 guidance. Flag football wasn't even mentioned. So Paul had provided 2 names at the state, and I had forwarded that email to Jesse Ciccone, who's the flag football director, and said, do you mind if I take this and run with it? And he's the sport director, so I said, sure, go for it. So Jesse did reach out, apparently connected with one of the 2 people, sent a fairly generic email back to me and Paul Savigny earlier today, kind of summarizing his conversation with this person. He thinks it looks optimistic based on his conversation with this person, but we really don't know any more than that, Glenn. We just want to be ready.
Okay,
and
I got it.
as far as we can until someone says.
Hey,
That-
Jack.
So,
Yeah.
on that is what I just read. Even flag football is classified as a low-risk sport. Tournaments and other competitions classify as a jamboree are not allowed. Over 100 people is not allowed. You already said it might be 600 people. How can you ignore that? That's if you're getting a break, and it is a low-risk sport. If it's a high-risk sport, forget it. But we're talking about this one event, not the season. If it's classified even as a low-risk sport, anything with more than 100 people is not allowed.
I have to agree with Archie on that. We're not talking about
whether or not it's a low risk or a moderate risk.
kids getting out. I agree with Archie. I mean, we can't, honestly, I really don't understand how we could allow this jamboree.
I'm not making this up.
So,
As far as whether or not this is a low risk or the risk level, if looking at the info, we got an email an hour or so, 5:53 it was sent actually. So yeah, just an hour ago. And it shows as sort of an analogous sport. It shows non-contact lacrosse as a moderate risk sport, and it shows regular lacrosse as a high risk sport. So I think you can correlate lacrosse and football, where touch football or flag football, I guess it's flag football, would be equivalent to the non-contact lacrosse, and regular football, tackle or touch or whatever, would be standard lacrosse. So in my mind, I would consider this to be, based on that, a moderate risk sport.
Yeah, but a moderate risk sport is okay. I think we can all establish that. But to go back on Archie's point about jamborees and people that, I'm sorry, in this day and age, it should have been said no right off the bat. You know what I mean by that?
And what I'm talking about is not even moderate. I'm talking about the low risk sports. This is like archery or juggling or something.
And I think Rick's going with like lacrosse. Women's lacrosse is low risk, and men's lacrosse is high risk.
What? Women's lacrosse is low risk and men's lacrosse is high risk?
Yeah, because there's no contact.
That is the most sexist thing I've ever heard. Jesus
no,
Christ.
There's no
Oh my God! What the?
There's no contact in women's lacrosse, and there's contact in men's lacrosse. And I'm not sure who's speaking, but they're swearing.
That's pretty standard.
I would ask.
Brad. I'm trying to mute Brad. Unmute him.
I would ask. Yeah, I would ask if they wouldn't. I would ask if they wouldn't use those things. But my daughter played 9 years in college in lacrosse. It's non-contact. Men's lacrosse is contact. So
Okay,
I'm looking at.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right.
Well, let's not worry about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure who was the person that was swearing.
It's Brad. I keep trying to mute you, Brad, and you keep unmuting yourself.
Yeah, I would say that the F word would be worse.
Never mind. Let's talking about other sports. We're talking about one sport here now. I'm telling you.
All right, just so you know, Archie, I've just dismissed Brad from the meeting.
Yeah,
okay.
he used some F words and stuff.
Yes.
That was
okay. Never mind. Cut it off, Glenn.
No. There needs to be a mind, Archie, because when somebody does that, they need to be called out. So then they need to be called out, and then making sure we're not condoning it. Okay.
We're not condoning.
That's the reason why I bring it up. Okay.
Well,
so
I just pushed him out of the meeting. So I just ejected him from the meeting, and I think that was warranted based on.
If he doesn't understand that women's lacrosse is non-contact and men's lacrosse is, then there is nothing he could give to this meeting.
I just want to let's get somewhere.
Yeah. Can I talk for a second?
There's no way the tournament would be approved by the Board of Health as things stand right now. That's the way I'm interpreting what the Commonwealth is saying about low-risk sports. And we're saying that this is a moderate-risk sport. 100 people is the cutoff, and you're talking about having people hanging around and having, socializing stuff. That's exactly what we don't want. No one wants that. That's not what, if you want them to play sports, fine, but we don't want families congregating on the sidelines, chatting and stuff. That's what the governor is trying to stop. And this is what the rules are trying to stop. So, I don't know. That's where I stand. I have a problem with the whole tournament idea completely this year. It's fine any other time. The whole world has changed. You can't even go down the orange juice aisle in the supermarket the way you want to. You have to do
the wrong way. So, all kidding aside, I agree with Archie. It would be irresponsible for a Board of Selectmen to even say yes or even maybe to somebody who said, hey, we're having a jamboree and we might have 600 people there. I mean, that would be an irresponsible thing on our behalf
We're not even
under the
getting the
present
game sponsors
conditions.
to show up or anything.
So I'm going to say, personally, I'm going to say no to the jamboree. You can't have it. With those, I mean, thank you for being honest and about the number of people that are going to be there. This is not about traffic. This is not about horses. This is not about whatever, how much space is up there. This is about somebody coming forward and saying to me, hey, we're going to have a flag football jamboree. I love flag football. It's an awesome sport. I'm glad you guys brought it up. You're getting a lot of more, but we're going to have a 600-person jamboree during COVID. I'm sorry, you can't have it. I love it. I'm going to support your season, but you can't have that jamboree. That's where I stand.
So, for the selectmen, I agree that the traditional jamboree, so if we have 160 or 180 youth athletes, it could be a total of 600 people there over the course of the entire day. The game started at 8:30 and I think they end at 4:30. So over that entire duration, normally there'd be 600 total people there. I fully realize we can't do that this year. And your response, Glenn, is in keeping with correct thinking. I mean, 600 people on 3 lower soccer fields is crazy, right? But I'm wondering if we can. So the question wasn't come to the table with what you think you could do, single games. Right now the jamboree, every team plays every other team. So every team has 3 games. Last year I coached 4.5 hours that one day. All my 3 kids game at 9 games, 9 30-minute games. So I realized the extent and scope of the typical jamboree could never be done this year with COVID. So I'm wondering, so the question wasn't come to the table with a downsized proposal and we'll take a look at it. In my mind, the effort tonight was to review the concurrent use between flag football and the equestrian group. If you want to take the jamboree off the table, if you want to take the jamboree off the table tonight, that's, I mean, it is what it is. But if you want to make that a separate topic with
the concurrent use is about the jamboree. You know what I mean? If you said there's only going to be a regular, we're going to have 4 games up there, we wouldn't even be talking about this right now because it wouldn't bother anybody and everything would be fine. So it's about the jamboree and having that much I guess it's all a hypothetical, I guess, because we don't know how many people are going to, but as individuals, as as selectmen, Angus, as a town manager, we have to think of the worst. Not of the worst as something's going to happen, but just as a number of people. Because at the end, when the helicopters are going around, and there's 600 people there, and they're all like, it's like, why didn't this, and then all of a sudden there's a spike in COVID. Why didn't anybody think about this?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a whole new world. What I mean?
I fully understand.
It's hard for us to understand. But honestly, under these conditions, we have to say no to the jamboree. And then, honestly, Kathy and Donna, we have to say, if you're going to have something with the riding and driving, it has to be scaled down too. We can't only say to the jamboree, hey, you can't have this many people, but we have to say, hey, we appreciate you could have some games there that day, but we have to say to the riding and driving, or at least I do, I'm not speaking for the board, hey, you guys have to understand the circumstances too, and that we can't have too many people, and there has to be proper social distancing, and that actually affects you more because you guys take up more space just with your cars and trailers. Do you know what I mean by that? We have to be fair on both sides.
Glenn,
that's my
Glenn, did you hear that? We had already planned to keep the numbers low this year. Because our organizers and our volunteers don't want exposure, so we had already planned to not have as big an event as we had hoped.
Does that mean
We were
have
cutting
a
it
cap?
down from 69 to about 40.
Okay, so you have a cap at 40?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Okay, good.
And at Adventure Trail, we don't have spectators, and we're following the USEF guidelines. And there are to be no spectators, riders only, unless of course they're bringing children and the father kind of hangs out by his truck. But there's not going to be any ring activity, which we always do. It's just going to be for riding. And they go out, they do 6 or 7 miles, and they come back and they leave. We're going to be putting them at 10-minute intervals. And if your ride is at 9:15 and you're not there, you lose it. We're not squeezing them in, and they know that. This is an offering so that we could, continue to make our donations to ECTA that keep our trails clear here in West Newbury. All our proceeds go to that. There's no profit here. This is really just an opening. And I'm a lay person. I don't know anything about this town like you guys do, but I want you to know that West Newbury Riding and Driving Club has 3 dates that we use Pipes Day for, and it's historical. I live across the street from the library, and on a Saturday and Sunday, on any other day, I can't get my trailer in because of the sports. I can't get it in, and we live with that. We're asking for 3 days, and this is one of them.
Okay, but I don't want to debate that. I don't want to, you might be right. I don't want to debate that tonight. Let's just talk about what we have on our agenda, because we could be an hour and a half about that. And I empathize with you. I empathize with you.
But I want you to understand that by giving up 1 day of the Jamboree, and you're saying everything that you've said, Glenn, you're spot on with what I believe. Everything that you said. Why can't we have a no sports day? Why can't we do this? Right? Why are we allowing so many people in? I just thought that would show you how we do live symbiotically with the sports.
I think if nothing else, this has taught us that we need to take a more hands-on approach, and that we need to look at the scheduling a little bit more. We're a small town, okay, and everything just always seemed to work. But I'll tell you, the programs that the Youth League has come up with, rugby, the flag football, and probably a couple of others that I can't remember. My kids never had the opportunity to do, because my youngest is 22. It's good. They're looking for kids to get out. So we're looking, they're adding more programs for kids to get outside and be active, which is awesome, which is obviously encroaching into a smaller space that we have. So we just have to be more diligent and, organize it. And that's what we're trying to do tonight, because I love what the youth group, they're doing and adding more programs. And I do not want to take away from the riding and driving club, because that is a backbone of West Newbury. And so we just all have to work together.
Yeah, I just thought that information was.
I guess this is growing pains. I guess we can call it growing pains, and we're all going to work it out. And because I think we're all here for the same reason, to make all our participants happy, and it's all going to work. But
okay,
just this year is crazy, because I'm going to go back to Archie about we can't have this Jamboree. Forget about this. Has nothing to do with the riding and driving club or youth sports or anything. We can't have a Jamboree under these conditions. That's. I'm going to go back to Archie about that. I agree with him.
So, Glenn, the purpose of this meeting, I think, was to talk about. See, part of the problem here is that the issue predates COVID. right? The West Newbury Riding and
Yeah, but we're gonna, this is a hard, we put it off because we've been doing, there's a lot going on in town. Everyone forgets about that. Number one, we're building a school. Number two, we're building a school. Number three, we're building the biggest construction project in the town, which is called a school. So everyone forgets about that. The town is a tiny town. We don't have that many people.
$1 million water thing.
I know,
mean-
but under the present circumstances, I had to put off dealing with this parking situation because there's so much else going on. But we now have all winter to solve this parking problem long term. But for the moment, we're solving September 13th, 2020, which is a month from now. And we have to solve that right now. And my feeling is there's no way that under the governor's guidelines that this jamboree can function. We will solve next year's problem and the parking problem, and maybe we'll deal with Brad's suggestion. Maybe there's ways of working the parking problems out better. But for now, we're solving September 13th problem, and that's what I want to do. Let's not talk about the big picture, because I've been on a committee, and Kathy was on it too. We talked a lot around about that, and we couldn't get anyone to agree on things. So we're going to have to try it again. But at the moment, we're solving September 13th. So that's what I want to do. Let's not talk about ancillary things. We can't deal with that right now. We're solving September 13th and October 11th, I believe. So let's end the discussion. I don't want to say we've beaten this horse to death. That's a terrible thing to say with the riding and driving.
So I would agree with you, Archie. So I'd make a motion that we wouldn't entertain any jamborees or any tournaments or any way of that many people congregating at any of our facilities in town. I mean, why would we up at Pipe Stave when we've made so many restrictions on every other facility in town? So that aspect of it, if they want to have their opening day and they have two teams play up there and there's, whatever, they said 5 on each time. I don't even know what it is. And they might have like 100 people, so to speak. I have no problem with that because that can all be managed. But no jamborees. So this has nothing to do about driving. It has nothing to do about youth sports. It has to do about the current situation in this country, in this town, that I would, as a selectman, would not allow up to 600 people at any time at any facility. I wouldn't allow 500. I wouldn't allow 400. I wouldn't allow 300. So I don't want to even start having the discussion about minusing people. So I say we need to send a message to youth sports saying that the jamboree, we're sorry, we love it, can't happen this year, but if you want to have a season, we'll support it.
So what's the limit on participants for the riding and driving event?
We, for September 13, we're capping it at 40 riders. Is that what you're asking, Brad? And there's going to be approximately 6 volunteers on the ground.
That wasn't Brad. That was Jack, I think.
Oh,
Brad,
No.
because
That was Brad. That was Brad.
is Brad back on now, even though he's been swearing and stuff, Angus?
He logged back into the meeting after being removed.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so can I speak for just a moment?
Yes.
Okay. So Glenn, all the selectmen, I completely agree with you that no jamboree this year. But I think the agenda item and what was trying to be solved kind of morphed halfway through the meeting. We were here to talk about concurrent use of pipe stave because of the letter that West Newbury Riding and Driving Club wrote to the selectmen and the town manager some time ago. That morphed into, you can't have the jamboree because of COVID. I didn't come to this, the agenda item wasn't decide if the youth league can hold the jamboree. We never intended on holding a jamboree this year. The question to me was, what does a jamboree look like and how can we solve this concurrent use of pipe stave? So historically, it's been 200 kids, 2 parents or a parent and a grandparent and a sibling. That's about 600 people for the day. So that frame of reference, those numbers was for a typical scenario in a non-COVID year. And how do we use those numbers to solve the concurrent use issue? It's gone sideways into you can't have 600 people in one place because of COVID, so no jamboree. So I'm a bit disappointed personally that we didn't solve the agenda item at hand. We canceled the jamboree because of COVID. If we can hold some events that same Sunday that are aligned, well, let me ask the question instead of making a statement. Can we hold youth sport events at Pipe Stave that Sunday that are in alignment with the state guidelines at that time, including any West Newbury amendments or including any selectmen decisions pursuant to? Can we plan on right now doing something there that Sunday in a limited fashion?
I would, okay, this is me speaking. So I would say yes, as long as we work with the riding and driving club to make sure that it's all, you know, like we've always done.
Yeah.
So with that piece of land is a town-owned land. So we kind of like, as a selectman, we give the Park and Rec Commission, they schedule it for us. It's not like the park behind the 1910 building. That was, well, I'm not even gonna get into that. So if you feel that it can all work and you talk to the riding and driving club, it never gets to us. So of course it can, of course it can work.
Yeah.
But I honestly, listen to me, I'm not kidding. I've sat in that, I've stood in that ring with Kathy, Tom Flaherty, and whomever else came before, because I've been here for 15 years, and we've tried to work this out. And here we are tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to be able to put some type of subcommittee together that we could figure this all out and come to Springtown meeting with, if we need some revenue, to work it all out, because this is a valuable piece of land, and it's used by a lot of people. You guys do a phenomenal job managing it, the fields and stuff, and I would love to be able to do that. So after this meeting tonight, just try to figure out this jamboree. We need to put a subcommittee together to go forward for Springtown meeting, to be able to come up with not a master plan, but something that would bring us 10 years down, maybe 20 years down, something, because we own all that land adjacent to it, the Dunn property. We own all that. It's a phenomenal amount. We could,
It is.
whatever.
Hey, Glenn, we've spoken about this, the Parks and Rec Commission, about developing a plan that deals with active, passive recreation, that deals with farming, ecological management, all the above, a decentralized approach that hires outside consultants, that doesn't start with a predetermined, we need to create a field, we need to create 200 parking spaces. What we need to do is come together as a town to do something bold, something big. We haven't done it in a while. We haven't done squat in a while as a town, except celebrate 200 years with a fireworks display.
Well, okay,
We need to do something bold.
let's keep it positive, because up until that point, Brad, I think it's Brad, because I don't see your face. Brad, I agree with everything you said. Let's keep it positive and let's not take shots at people. I think absolutely what you said is what we need to do, and we need to be strong, we need to be bold, and we need to do it and make decisions. They might hurt a few people's feelings, but you got to do it. But don't take shots at people while you're making a good point.
So I will definitely refrain from calling that football event on Sunday a jamboree for this year. If we can hold something that's in keeping with all of the guidance and all of the town amendments, that would be great for this year. And if we can't, then we can't. I'm hoping we can. If the selectmen see it differently, or if the guidance at the time prevents it, then so be it. But definitely not a 600-person jamboree from 8:30 to 4:30 with 600 people and 200 cars. No way.
Jack,
No,
Again, that wasn't.
I was
Go ahead.
thinking that if you have, say, say there's just, I don't know, 1 or 2 games or one, just for the sake of argument, 1 game going on at a time. So that eliminates a tremendous number of automobiles that would be parking at Page, a lot fewer people, needing to cross 113. Because if we're just having much scaled down, then the parking at the DPW area would accommodate almost everybody necessary for that. Or
That's not going to work
at one time.
That's
If
not going to
people are
work.
staying all day, that should work.
No, that's not going to work. You really need to segregate the 2 events so that when people are getting out of their cars, there's no potential chance of them walking behind a horse or interacting with any of the trailers that are parked between the fields and the parking lot. I really think you need to park for that day. At least a concession needs to be made for temporary parking on the outfield of the Babe Ruth League.
Yeah, but Brad, for whom though? You say for the riding and driving?
No, for flag. I say flag comes off 113. They come in, they go past the recycling center, bang a left, and then they park on that outfield.
Yep, yeah, no, I can see that. But Kathy,
However, the horses are still using that gravel.
isn't that a road that you use to go into Dunn and then go over?
Yes, that we are this year using that road.
So is there some concessions that you guys can make?
I don't do the route, so I can't speak for where else to go. I would have to, unfortunately, Deb is not in town right now. She might be able to come up with a different route that doesn't go around the Dunn Field. I know last year, one of the routes we did, we ran into some issues with the Concom because it might have put too much manure on that particular route because it's a sensitive area. So we're trying to avoid that route too. I know, it's tricky.
Okay, so hold on, Jack. What's the end date on this jamboree? So are we canceling the jamboree? I mean, seriously. So
Glenn, yes, the event that
I agree.
she said everything that she said. We can't.
Kathy, say what you said. We didn't catch
I
that.
was going to say, speaking for the Riding and Driving Club, if there was parking at the DPW, I do believe it could be run safely. I do believe because we've had kids doing from the DPW and the Page School for the last 2 years. It's just when we were trying to hold something bigger, and we know that the sports is holding something bigger. And it was the size of the 2 things. But this year, if both things are smaller, I think it will work.
Yeah, I have to say that as a volunteer of that day on Adventure Trail, and I've seen the kids and the parents, it's really delightful, the combination, providing they understand the safety. So it's value added to a certain degree, as long as we can, be safe, parking, that kind of thing.
So, Glenn, if I can answer your initial question, the event that will be known as the Jamboree, round robin tournament style games are not in play this year for obvious reasons. So yeah, the Jamboree is canceled for this year. Okay. That's that for sure. Now, Kathy, let me ask what might be a stupid question. If the youth league families could somehow park somewhere and gain access to the trail that's behind the backstop on field 4 and make their way down to the lower fields, we could be completely staying away from the gravel drive behind the outfield in field 4 and done property altogether. Knowing what areas you would be using on that day in September, do you know of any way we could park at DPW and somehow walk to the trail going down the hill behind the backstop without directly crossing over the area that the equestrian folks would be using?
I don't see a problem with that because it's just the problem we had in February was when we were trying to hold a bigger event, and we knew that you were a bigger event, but we are trying to hold a smaller event, and you're holding a smaller event, and I think that will work.
This sounds great. This sounds like what we need in Washington. Everybody's, agreeing.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is when I went to the selectmen's meeting was listening in on Monday, Glenn had said, let's try and make it work. So I knew we were already trying to have a smaller event. I talked with Donna and we both agreed that if the sports was smaller, we would have not as much problem with it. It's just that when the two events get so big that it's a problem. But for two smaller things, I have no problem with running at the same time as sports. Especially for Adventure Trail, for when it is our Pipestave Hill event, that more is a problem because we often take people down the path that goes by those lower fields, and that can be a problem. But for Adventure Trail, especially the route we're running, I think it will work this year.
Okay, so final question then, I think we sort of solved this. Who is going to be hanging out at the entrance to the street at 113 and the crosswalk by
Whenever we've had a crossing before, the police have always approved this using a volunteer for the organization. The last couple of years, they have kindly provided us with the yellow appropriate colored vests and a good supply of orange cones that we put out so that people are aware that something is coming up to cross. And we were hoping to do that same organization again this year.
Hey, Archie,
do you feel comfortable with that? I'm sorry, so Jack, do you feel comfortable with that?
I'm sorry, Archie, I didn't realize the question was directed to me. Yes, if the selectmen were of the opinion that a uniform detail officer is a better solution, then we could entertain that as well. But if it's a volunteer and everyone's okay with that, it's worked in the past, it should work again.
Archie, what I was going to say is that if we have a detailed explanation, because it's actually worked in the past, if we have something that was be signed off by our chief, how it was going to be, administered or, that day, that I would go along with what Kathy said about, providing them with vests and cones and making sure that, because I've seen that. I mean, we've all seen that. And I think it's worked well in the past. And I think if it's going to be a low volume event this year, it's only going to work better.
It's all about numbers, and if it's lower numbers, it's less people crossing, there's less chaos, it's better, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I have a question, regarding the crossing. I thought that policy, town policy based on application for use of town facilities required that, and I'm not trying to spend anybody's money, but I thought that policy required that there be a detail officer for any street crossings. I thought that was part of the form, and maybe I remember wrong, but I thought that was part of the form that was an application for use of town facilities.
I was gonna say, Rick, the last couple of years, this is what the police have signed off on for us.
Yep.
We have followed that they are the ones who made the suggestion of running it this way. And so that's what we have done. That's how they wanted, that's how they had not required us to have a police detail, because frankly, that's an expense that.
It's state law that anybody directing traffic, really, anybody providing detail functions needs to be a police officer.
I mean, I
Just
you know,
thinking
I,
of-
I don't want to be hard about it. I'm trying to be realistic about, what are the rules? And
We've gone by what the police has suggested in the past.
Rick, the fact that you just brought that up made me think of, are we breaking the rules by having 2 events on one day with so many people in one place, as far as COVID is concerned?
well, yeah, I mean, that's another set of rules, I guess.
I don't even know how to apply. They're on different parcels of land, so I don't know about that.
Perhaps we should check with the chief about what he would like to, what he thinks should be done.
Angus, can you talk with Jeff tomorrow? And like, how does he feel about volunteer with basketball versus officer at the crossing?
Archie, I'm not sure I totally heard that because of the feedback, but yeah, I'll talk to the chief tomorrow. I talked to him today. He received all of the materials leading up to this meeting, and he's well aware of the issues. And so yeah, I'll talk to him tomorrow. And it's correct. Both Rick and Kathy are correct. The stated policy is a police detail, but over the years, the chief has signed off on something less than that, with the volunteers performing that function. Brad made his point. I'll certainly look into that. I think it's an issue of the chiefs have been trying to work with the organizations to not bust the budget. If Brad's correct that there's a state law, then certainly we need to be aware of that.
Okay.
I'll review all of this with the chief.
So we spent an hour and 35 minutes. What's our conclusion? I gotta get to it because the F word's been used against me tonight. We've had 5,000 acres that we can park, whatever it is. I just want to know, because I think it's important for Jack to understand some direction so they can tell, especially Jack, there's so many families that are involved, that are relying on our direction tonight.
Jack, how many actual, you had a regular number of people? How many teams do you have?
So Archie, I apologize. The audio's,
How many teams are there?
how many teams?
Yes.
Between 5 and 6 per age group. There's 3 age groups.
So there's 15.
Is that per town, or is that, you know what I mean?
No.
Because I was told that an hour and a half, well, now it's probably 2 hours and 47 minutes ago, that it was only West Newbury kids. So when you say that, is it, and I'm not trying to be a jerk, I just want to make sure that the proper information is disseminated.
So if there was a game every 45 minutes, that would accommodate that. It could easily be done by 2 or 3 o'clock. If you started in the morning, if you're going to have 7 or 8 games and like 45 minutes per game, you're going to have to organize things between games. So that's doable. Is that unreasonable or no?
No, that's quite reasonable, Archie. Let's say for the sake of conversation, there's 16 teams. Obviously, a game is 2 teams, so there'll be 8 games.
So you can't have them finish 1 second apart. So you got to have a break between. But say if you had a half-hour game and you got 15 minutes, organizing between games, and that would take approximately 6 hours to get 8 games in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. Quite reasonable. And again, there would be, by my math, there'd be 2 people. So, right, 5v5, excuse me. So 10 players, 2 refs, and assuming each player has 2 family members there, that would be 20. So a total of 32 people at the game between the participants, the refs, and the folks watching the game. Now,
And they might have a sibling or 2 or, whatever. But so we're nowhere near the limit by doing that, though. That's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I've heard of some towns limiting baseball games to 1 parent, so not both parents. So, I mean, we could even do that and cut the numbers down more.
I don't have an opinion about that.
But if you don't have to cut it down more, then
I have an opinion about that too, as long as we don't have a jamboree.
I mean, that sounds viable to me, Jack. And just I did it. So there are no, this isn't a jamboree, so there aren't going to be. Each team is going to play 1 game.
Yes.
That's the way it's looking right now. Yeah.
Can I make one more comment about that? Donna, we start at like 9 is it 8:30 or 9 in the morning?
The riders start out at 9, typically.
Right, and we usually are done with this number of people. We'll be sending our last rider out probably about 11 or 12. So the last rider would be in at 2. So if the sports would be over at 4 and start at 10, that would cut down a lot of the overlap. Because we would start at 9, and if they started later, there would be less overlap.
I'm a little confused why the USEF, sorry, I don't know the acronym, the meaning, I'm sure Kathy does, but we're not allowed to have any spectators. How are we, and this is not a jab at anyone, I'm more than happy to watch sports. Well, how is sports getting, pardon the lack of better words, getting away with having all those spectators?
Well, I think the youth sports, they're parents. They're not other.
But I mean, if I'm a parent and I'm sitting next to another parent, we're not, do I sit 6 feet away with a mask?
Probably.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess the assumption is that everybody's got a mask and everybody's socially distanced.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Donna,
I just
if
don't
you
know
go,
why we can't have spectators. And it's not because of your rules, but that's USEF, Equestrian United States, whatever. I don't know what it stands for.
United States Equestrian Federation.
Okay.
And it's the rules it's the governing rules for recognized events. It does not necessarily apply to our trail ride, but we have decided that they are good, worthwhile COVID guidelines to follow. So that's why we are following them. And it's not so much for Adventure Trail usually doesn't have spectators. It's more for when we run our 3-phase events. And so
I know we basically agreed as a group that we would take the protocol for
Correct.
USEF, and we
Well,
don't usually have spectators.
I think we're getting off in the weeds here.
Archie, for what it's worth, the state's guidelines for phase 3, step 1 permits no more than 100 people, including participants, players, coaches, and volunteers, spectators in the aggregate.
That's what I already said twice.
So Donna, if you have up to 100 people, you're fine.
Right, I was, just curious on how,
I just want to know if do horses
Count, no,
count in the aggregate?
no, they don't get to wear, actually, horses do get a coronavirus, but it's a different one. The horses have their very own coronavirus, but it's nothing like this coronavirus.
Archie, if I could make two brief points.
On a ventilator. Okay.
Two brief points, Archie.
You're the chairman of the selectmen, meeting tonight. Can we come to some type of conclusion?
I'm trying. Other things keep
I
getting.
want to go offline, but we need to come to something tonight, because all these talks for 10 years have never come to some type of thing. This is only about this fall.
Okay,
and
we know that, Glenn. You're making it go longer. Okay, we've decided that
Could I make 2 points, Archie?
Okay, go ahead.
So one, I just don't want to muddy the waters in terms of the jurisdiction for the safety and protocols for running the event. It's great, the discussion tonight, but that is going to be a health function, and any sign off on facilities as whatever knows this, but I just want to make it clear. Paul signs off on all of that anyway. So he's going to be reviewing with both the Youth League and Riding Drive Club. He's already been reviewing. He'll continue to review. So it's great for this discussion, but we don't need to arrive at a conclusion on those things. The health will do that. The second point, and this returns to Glenn's comment of where are we going with all of this. Probably over an hour ago, Glenn, you made a motion to not entertain any jamboree or tournament. The motion wasn't seconded, but if that was voted, that's a tangible thing. And I think that's basically what I'm hearing is the outcome. And it leaves, Park and Rec to, work with riding and driving, and it seems like everyone's moving in that direction.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor? Aye.
Kemper, aye.
Parker, aye.
And with an understanding that the selectmen are here to try to work anything out we possibly can for that facility, and look forward to some proposals that we can work with at Springtown meeting to enhance that facility.
Great. And we did,
Archie, you're muted.
COVID came along. We
Archie.
did, yeah.
Archie's muted.
Archie, you're muted.
After we get our meeting done, we will create a committee and attack the problem again and get at least semi-permanent solution that we can then bring to town meeting in the spring. And it may involve, as Brad said, having a party that the town might have to spend some money on to come up with some outside the box plan. We'll do that.
Sounds good.
I heard almost nothing of what Archie said. Just then, there was noise coming in, I think, on Glenn's line. So could you repeat that, please, Archie?
Just that after the fall town meeting, we'll assemble a committee. And come up with a plan, maybe involving hiring an outside consultant. Maybe we can even do it before at the Springtown meeting, but we get someone in here without preconceived notions and come up with it. It may require spending some money but come up with a parking solution that advances all the different groups that want to use the pipe stave. So we will do that after, October or whatever, after the fall town meeting, we'll assemble that committee. We tried to do it before, but we're going to do it. We're going to do it this time.
That sounds great, Archie.
Okay.
Okay, next item on the agenda is and this should be hopefully pretty
Thank
quick.
you all. That was painful on all parts, but we got a little bit accomplished.
Great. So next agenda item is to look at the establishing a deadline for selectmen receipt of any proposed articles for potential inclusion on the fall town meeting warrant. And to the board members, I know I'd sent a list to you in the last day or two of potential articles. Anything I've heard back since then doesn't substantially change that. There's two additional, actually three potential additional articles in addition to the list I circulated. If you want, I can go through those. But I think by any count, we're looking at maybe 10 articles, somewhere in the 8 to 12 article range. So I did speak with Gary Roberts yesterday. He didn't, I talked through generally the potential articles, but he didn't have the list in front of him. He was on vacation, so he was calling from the beach. So, I told him verbally, but I don't want to pin him down in terms of the amount of time it's going to take the finance committee to review and go through their process. But he said, they're going to work with the time they're given. They'll do the best job they can within the time they're given. And the further the warrant articles are, and the more, well thought out things are, the easier their job is. So basically, I want to make sure we have enough time on the front end to put together good articles so that can make their jobs easier.
Have you looked at the money amounts of those articles, because that determines the quorum levels?
Yes, I do expect the free cash transfer to be above the threshold that would set the higher quorum. So we did go ahead, following Monday's selectmen meeting, we did go ahead and post public notice that the meeting on August 17th will consider selectmen consideration of a reduced quorum for the fall town meeting. So that's underway. That's
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the only, that free cash transfer is the only one, that I would think is potentially a big money article. A second could be if there's a proposal to revisit the question of transferring from school stabilization fund, but that's going to be totally up to the board. I don't know if you want to do that or not.
Well, Angus,
That's up to Art.
has the tree article, which would be 50.
That was the third one on my list, so that's pretty big money too. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I have a couple of questions too. One of them was we chose not to move to put any funding aside for the bridge for the Springtown meeting. And at the time we chose not to do that, we speculated that we might do that in the fall. I think the total amount that we were estimating the town would need would be in the range of $600,000 ultimately when the job is done. So the question is, at what point do we want to set money aside for that? And I think that was going to be a transfer from free cash, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
So that's my first question. And the second one is, I know, there's been, I've had conversations with Jeff Duran, with the Chief Duran about a, replacement police vehicle, because there was discussion of originally it was going to be a hybrid Fusion, which Ford has discontinued. And now unfortunately, the replacement SUVs, the new model SUV is going to be substantially more expensive than the old model vehicles previously were. And I don't know if there's sufficient funds currently available for vehicle replacement. I don't know how we want to handle the historic schedule of, annual replacement going forward. And there's the possibility that there might be some small contribution, a $5,000 contribution from Green Communities grant that we applied for. We don't know yet if we're going to receive that, although I think we probably will. So, should we be considering whether or not there's currently adequate funding appropriated for or available for replacement police vehicle?
So that is on my list. I didn't, if you want me to go through the list, I can. I asked the
Oh, was
question.
that on the list? I'm sorry, Angus. I
No,
left
it
it.
wasn't on the list I sent. It was one of the three that came in the last 2 days. But yeah, Chief Durant has submitted an art. But the point of tonight's meeting, my understanding, is not to go through all the articles. That's the.
Yep, understood.
On the 17th. The point of tonight's meeting is to set a deadline for when people need to submit articles.
Yeah.
So I circulated the list. Just this is the best information we have on what we know of right now. So the three that came in since I sent that list out to the board, whenever it was, I think yesterday, is the article for the funding of the police cruiser. And there's a whole backstory we can go into, and there is about $7,300 in the police cruiser revolving fund, but there is a funding gap there. The second is the Harbor Committee has been looking at potential. They've been doing a feasibility study for potential mooring field, and the chair of the Harbor Committee sent me a note this week saying they may want to propose funding to take that to the next step of analysis this fall. Obviously, it's going to be up to the selectmen whether you. No, I didn't think we were doing this tonight, honestly. That's why I didn't get into it initially.
I'm not being whatever, but I'm on my boat, making sure that
We're not here to talk about the substance, what's on the article or the warrant, just to set a deadline. That's all we need to do. So,
Okay.
so if you want to jump right to that, I would recommend a deadline of,
Angus, the question was, we held it off for tonight because you were going to ask Gary, but you can't get a hold of Gary, so.
no, I talked to Gary. I talked to Gary for an hour. But he was on the beach, so he didn't have the list in front of him. I read it to him on the phone. So I'm saying I'm not going to take that to the bank because, he didn't have like the write-up and all the stuff you have because he was on the beach.
Angus,
Okay.
whatever schedule that you have,
Yeah.
I will support because you know.
I think if the deadline for warrant articles to the selectmen is around Tuesday, September 1st, that would allow the board to close the warrant on September 8th. And you already would have said you're not going to consider anything that comes in after the 1st, even though you have to actually meet to close the warrant. So the warrant would actually close September 8th. I think that is going to be tight for an October 17th date, but I think that it's doable. It's going to be tight. There's in any scenario, it's going to be tight. But that's what I would recommend is if I sent a note around to everybody saying no later than September 1st, if you want to pull that back a week, I would have no objection. But regardless, I think it's going to end up being the 8th that you actually vote or that you actually close the warrant. That would basically give FinCom the month of September with an October 17th town meeting date. The latest that the warrant could be posted and that the FinCom booklet could be distributed would be Friday, October 2nd. So basically, FinCom's dealing with about a month at the most between knowing what's on the warrant and actually publishing a booklet. It's a very, very tight timeline. And that's why I think when it comes down to it, my guess is the board is going to be very selective on what you put on the warrant or not. So we may get all kinds of proposals. It's up to you what you actually include on the warrant. We have to take into account we're going to have a condensed time frame. We've got a shorthanded FinCom with the members who have done a lot of the work in the booklet are no longer there. So we need to keep that in mind.
Right, we have one newbie and one vacancy, so it's shorthanded.
And everyone knows, Forbes did a lot of the work on that booklet. Everyone contributed, no question, but he's going to be tough to replace just in terms of the hours he put in. So whether you close it, Tuesday, September 1st or Monday, August 24th, I think the actual, closing date is probably going to be September 8th. And, once, I'd like to sit with Gary when he's back and really go through this in more detail. But when I spoke to him yesterday, he did not expect to have a FinCom meeting until toward the end of August. So maybe the 24th would be better, because that, even though it's not formalized until the board meets on September 8th, at least there's no more moving parts after that, August 24th.
Or Angus, how about halfway through that week? How about the 26th or the 27th or?
Yep. That'd be fine.
So that would be if it was the 26th or 27th, that would be exactly 3 weeks from now. So if someone was on vacation for a week or something, if we did the 24th, they could literally not even be able to do something. We're only giving them a week.
Yeah, that gives that extra Monday and Tuesday night. I think that's a fine idea.
So I would make a motion that we close the warrant on August 27th.
Kemper, second.
So just to clarify, and I think we still got Mike on the line. I think, Mike, if I understood you correctly, the warrant would actually close when
Okay,
they
you know what I mean, yeah.
but you just stop accepting articles on that date.
Right.
Is that right, Mike?
Unmute myself. Yeah, that's basically it. Is that you're just telling everyone that as a board, you're not going to accept any articles that were submitted after that date. And then on September 8th, you basically vote the warrant, at that time. You'll close it and that'll be, and you'll, actually, no, you can close the warrant but you have to know the articles that you're closing it to. So you'll have a list and go from there.
And in the spirit of trying to get things to FinCom as, tight as possible, I think, that time between the 27th and the board's meeting on September 8th, I'd be Mike and other staff to get that warrant to get that article language, basically try to get it in a final form. So that's where, getting back to the meeting coming up on August 17th, I think that's the night, even though we may or may not have formal submittals in front of us in terms of articles, I think the 17th, the board, I expect, that night we'll have a really substantive discussion going through everything that either we know or we expect may be submitted as an article.
Or the things we passed over in the.
That's on those lists. Yeah, that's included on that list. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
So there may be things that are great ideas, but the board may decide there's just it's not fair to put the FinCom or the whole organization in that position to try to get so much through on a short timeline.
I have to ask this question. Do we need one in the fall? Because you understand the things we have to do to be able to accomplish that. Do we really, 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 really need one?
If we don't do the free cash transfer, and in light of the town meeting voters, substantial reduction of the selectmen's proposal for the school stabilization transfer, if we don't do anything, the tax bills go out, people are gonna have sticker shock.
Well, I understand that, and to go back to Archie's, the day of our town meeting, and he's saying, what are these people, I'm not going to speak for him. Don't they understand that we're trying to reduce their taxes? That one, it is what it is. We tried. I even spoke to try to reduce it. But the other one, I mean, do we really need to do it?
I think the free cash transfer is going to be important because it's
Okay, I got it. You don't have to explain. No, I got it.
So right now we have a motion by Archie and a second by Glenn to set August 27th as the last day to receive proposed articles.
Further discussion? Hearing none. Archibald, aye.
Kemper, aye.
Okay. All right, I will send out the word. And just for reference, last year it was early September that we were still having a discussion about the timing of town meetings. So I think if nothing else, this COVID kind of spurred us into action sooner. So that's not a bad thing.
Good. Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Kemper, aye.
Thank you.
Archibald, aye.
Have a good night.